right, welcome in, guys. It's the TT Show coming in with the newest episode on Black men and mental health. We usually give you the tea on a Black woman's journey, but we're giving you the tea on a Black man's journey and what we have to deal with, or what they would have to deal with in our society right now. Today we have with us Lorenzo Lewis, who is the founder of,
The Confess Project.
The Confess Project.
Yes.
Go ahead and introduce yourself for me.
I'm Lorenzo Lewis with the Confess Project. We are a national grassroots movement that's committed to building a culture of mental health for young men of color and their families. Our work is rooted in supporting young Black men by training barbershops and barbers to be mental health advocates. Today we've trained over 300 barbers in 20 cities. We train Black men that are behind the chair to be great listeners to how to recognize depression and anxiety, all the way to how to support their brothers and their sisters that may come through the barbershop. Using this as a way to help people to be seen, heard, and validated, but also celebrated at the same time, as we don't have many places in America to do so.
Okay. Yeah. I want to know, with that, what made you come up with that initiative? Was it something personal that you went through, like, being a Black man?
Right,
how do you connect with that?
For me, it was, I grew up in my aunt's beauty salon. So every day, here in Little Rock, off of Asher Avenue, I went to a beauty shop every day as a kid, probably from the age of 5 to 14. Going there, it was just transformational. Seeing Black women getting each other through their stuff, going through divorce, unemployment. I saw every different stereotype of people, women and men, that was just trying to make it another day. Using that experience, in months, those people would flourish simply because of those relationships. Right. And it was just a long-term embodiment of the Black community coming to a place and just being, again, just feeling being worth it. Using that experience, I did face incarceration as a juvenile. I also went through some depression, childhood trauma, was involved in gangs, bypassed the felony conviction. So these things, I realized that also sounded like other young Black men in my community and across the United States. So using that same, how do we allow a stylist or a barber to change somebody's life? Just like I saw a lot of women and men like to change their shop. So. Okay,
I like that. Do you think, so now, as you guys know, what's going on in 2021, we have Black men being killed by the police. We have Black men being killed by regular civilians who believe that their race or they're superior over them, and even us as women. How does that affect you as a Black man right now? Because we've been dealing with it for 400 years, but now since social media, we're seeing it on the forefront every day.
I think me as a Black man, it feels as if it's a very hopeless situation. We look at everything that we see is programming. So we realize that other Black men are being murdered. Black men in our families are going to jail. From all the way from, multiple Black men having, multiple children and just living destructive lifestyles. Right. After a while, it becomes a programming, which means that many Black men, regardless if they want to do better, will very seldomly not do better simply because of the programming and the environment in their communities. Mm-hmm. So a lot of this is, how do we reimagine being healthy, being better? And that's what we're doing, like through the barbershop. We reimagining mental health through a conversation, through relationships. Black men are mostly told to be tough, to not be able to open up, but we're also using this narrative that it is possible, it's okay to not be okay. And so when you start to reimagine and to kind of use a radical understanding of pushing the system that don't want to change, then we will see a change at some point. And I think it just takes time to keep doing it.
At any point in your life, did you feel that mental health or going to see a therapist, or maybe when you felt depressed or maybe anxious, or at any time, did you feel that it was okay to see somebody, or how did you feel? Because I know a lot of people feel that it's too expensive, or it's just like, I don't need to see anybody. I'm not crazy. I'm strong. I'm a man. I got this.
Yeah, I think a lot of it for me was when I started doing this work, I had left the behavioral health scene for about 10 years working in psychiatric hospitals here in Arkansas. And so I realized that there was a possibility of healing, but I think it looked different for everybody. Most African Americans, what we know, data says that we're less likely to receive treatment than the white population. Some of this is due to racism. Some of this is also due to lack of insurance, lack of coverage. Some of this is due to lack of information. Some of us don't actually know how to, or what does that entail. And then a lot of this is stigma. It's what our families have told us, that this is a white person's issue. This is not our problem. That we should go to church and that's the end of it. But that's not our reality. And I think that once we start to understand what that narrative does, I think we can start to really rebuild something promising for us. But I think personally, I realized that when I started doing this work, that I needed to go and get some help if I wanted to tell other black men to go and get help as well. And so I had a client actually in a barbershop that actually asked, did I ever go and get help? What was that process like? And I kind of startled because I couldn't really couldn't think of a moment where I actually went and got that help. And so that's when I started really, for the last couple of years, going to therapy. It's been just a game changer. So
I love that. Yeah, I love therapy. I'm a proud advocate. We have social workers, therapists, everybody in the audience. Shout out to y'all. One thing that touched home for me, I have an older brother, and I see what, I want to say the system has done to him. And I know he's not the only black man that they have done this to. I have cousins, I have friends, things like that. That school to prison pipeline is really real. Most of the public schools that we were in the areas that we were in, they didn't care about a young black man and their mental health. If a little boy was acting bad in class, it was just because he was acting bad and he needed to be suspended or he needed to be expelled. And not knowing that, no, maybe something is really, not right. They need to, I don't even want to say not right, but they may have something wrong with them and they might need, that's not saying, but you know what I mean? They need to go see someone. They need to go get help and maybe diagnosed with a behavioral issue or something like that. And as my brother gotten older, he was constantly in and out of trouble. His father was around, but he didn't have that father figure. It was always, let me just give you a whooping and this will be over. But that was just that. In and out of jail. And this last time that he went to jail and what the charge was for, it was DUI. Just put it out there. Sorry, brother. But it was something that took to me. Well, it was just like, what are you going to jail for? You didn't hurt anybody. No one was killed. This is something where they need to put you in a rehab. You need to go somewhere where you can really get help, because in prison, you don't really get the help that you should really need. Like in America, our prison systems, as we know, suck. Other countries, they have therapists. They're able to be genuinely helped and work through their issues rather than just being locked away. And when you get out, you get out. Now you're institutionalized. Now you low-key want to go back to jail because that's almost the only thing that you know. And I can see what it's doing to a black man, because I see it firsthand with my brother. So how do you feel about that? Like, I know that you said you bypassed the felony conviction and things like that. How does that resonate with you?
I think for me, I was grateful. I grew up with my aunt and uncle. I mean, they had, pretty middle-wage jobs, were able to keep the lights on, keep food in the house. So when I actually went into juvenile, I always tell people that my point of not becoming a part of recidivism and going back into the system is because I did have my basic needs met. Mm-hmm. When you think about the black community, when you think about unemployment, when you think about just the the lack of the education system, racism, how racism impacts your health, your well-being, your quality of life, there is a high understanding of people's basic needs probably are not being met. Mm-hmm. All the way from just being supported, just being listened to. Right. That's what helped me to not go back into the system. I take it a step further. I have siblings that did not get their basic needs met, that actually became a part of the system over and over. Family members the same. Mm-hmm. So when you really think about it, we have to always think about, what does systemic racism do to us long term, and why does that continue to create this cycle? And I'm just speaking personally, I had every reason to go back into the system, but I had my basic needs met. I had running water. I had a meal on the table at 6:00 in the evening. There was not rats and roaches in the house. Like there was oftentimes, even though my community around me was going through it and I was kind of trapped around this identity of who I needed to become, but I also still had a pretty decent place to live at. Mm-hmm. When you think about most black men, women, because incarceration is very high with black women as well. When you think about the lack of fatherhood, the lack of family unification, we got to think about, what does that look like if their basic needs being met? And that's trauma. When trauma starts to set in, it really creates something very long term that can become a detriment to your physical and your emotional health. And so I think that's what separated me. And I think about a lot of, even when I was in the system, incarcerated, a lot of the youth that were there were in foster care. Mother was on crack. Grandmother was taking care of 5 or 6 kids. All of what we know our communities go through, even our own families. And so when you think about what does that look like, for a grandmother to be weighed down with 5 or 6 kids and the mother's out there on drugs, like it's very likely these kids are they don't have the type of mentorship and support. It's going to be it could possibly be a very destructive lifestyle. It is something called resilience. And I think we could talk about that here shortly. How do you overcome and what does that look like? But
I'm glad you said that. That was one of the next question. I definitely feel like that, to piggyback off of what you said, was their basic needs not being met. A lot of people or a lot of kids, when they don't have that person at home taking care of them or doing, the basics, they have to go out and get it on their own. They have to go out and get it out the mud, jump off the porch, because that's just what they have to do, which leads into them seeing things that they shouldn't have to see, getting things done to them that shouldn't be done, and eventually maybe going to jail and things like that. So I think that all falls in line with mental health and how most Black children, Black men, Black women, we don't get that help.
Yeah.
So how do we get through it? Especially with resilience. I feel like I'm someone that was able to get through everything that I've been through, and maybe even put up that mental block. It helps me right now, so don't judge me. But the only thing that I could do is just keep pushing. But that's just me. What's more healthier to get through what you went through?
First off, we don't know any better, so we will turn to drugs or
alcohol.
It's just, again, that's our environment, right? When we look around, we saw Big Mama, our aunties get stressed out over bills. Then late at night, their eyes was bloodshot red and they was walking a little funny, right? That's the way they got through that crazy energy bill that came through that night. That oftentimes can become resonated through how we do the same thing over and over, right? And so as life began to weigh down on us, I think we also have to think about what happened. We all are an imagery of the people we were raised by, no matter how much we think about it. So as you don't like your mother and father as much as you don't have a terminus relationship with your siblings, then that's going to really become reimagined through trauma, through your current relationship, through your marriages, through people that you're cool with, your friendships. So for people that can't keep a friend, you oftentimes have to take a step back and look at yourself. And so a lot of that is trauma, right? So when we have to understand our trauma is a part of our healing journey, it's kind of like what we're doing now. We're talking through it. And sometimes we're not given a chance to be heard. And so we just keep pushing through it. We keep going back and forth through the same cycles, whether it's jail or getting back into relationships where you're not loved, but you're studying entering them because you hadn't learned to love yourself. And so
he's speaking to me. He's talking about me, y'all.
So I think that, once we can really identify that I'm a little, I wouldn't say broken, but I have some issues.
Little cracks.
And, and that you keep that at the forefront of your relationships you enter, that helps you to start their resilience process. I think the next step of that is support, which means that people that you are around every day, they need to know what type of trauma you went through. What does that mean? If you have a friend or somebody you're dating and you had a hard time with your father and you're dealing with, I don't really love myself, that person needs to know that because that will tie back to their relationship. Same thing with your children. A lot of times people have children based on because they're missing someone, not knowing that that's tied to grief.
Right.
So when we start to now create kids and people around us, sometimes it's still tied back to you needing to heal. Maybe you didn't need that child. Maybe that was just you still going through that grief. And knowing that that's a beautiful thing that happens. But now we got to really now do a little bit more work.
Right.
Because now we brought somebody into the picture and we're still dealing with, I'm still trying to create. A lot of men, Black men do that. Often when they lack love from their mothers and their fathers, they go out and start multiplying kids. And so that is something we have to start to realize is that where did my mothers and fathers really sit with us and how did that, so I think ultimately recognizing that is a part of our resilience.
Yeah.
I think this could go on, but I also think that that support piece is really critical and letting the people know that's around you that you need a little bit more support. Also understanding if people say, no, I can't support your mental health, then you may not need to be dealing with that
Around them,
person.
yeah.
Because that's the reality of what's going on with you. I deal with depression. My wife understands that time to time, I may go through some stuff. She's like, hey, you checked in with your therapist? You know, I'm very busy a lot. So often I have to, she kind of checks in with me. So
Right.
I think that people got to know where we are. And I think that really helps us to become resilient long
I
term.
think that's really important to have those type of people around you to let you know, because sometimes you don't even recognize that you're going through what you're going through. So you need those people to be like, hey, what's going on? Is everything okay? If you have a therapist, have you talked to your therapist? Do you need a therapist? What do you need to do?
Yeah.
So I really think that's cool. Did anybody have any questions, comments? I know y'all got something to say about this mental health journey.
What is your Instagram so people can follow you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So our organization, the Confess Project, is the Confess Project, all one word. My personal Instagram is Lorenzo P. Lewis. Also, we are interested in supporting Black women. So hopefully in our barbers work, we want to start working with stylists.
Yeah.
Our culture, the Black community, everybody goes to the salon at some point.
Right.
So we are focused on really wanting to support Black women and children. So that's why we're in our mission. We talk about supporting young Black men and their families, because you cannot support Black men without supporting their mothers, their grandmothers, and or their children, and their wives, right? Whoever else is around them. So that's a way to kind of connect with us. So
I love that, because us Black women need therapy too.
Yeah.
What's going on, girl?
I was actually going to ask, so what advice would you give to Black women to help support their Black men?
Yeah, that's a good one.
We need some of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, that's a really good question. I think one thing that we talk about when we train our barbers, a part of a stress response is that we got to fix it. We got to fix the problem. So if somebody is stressed out and say, hey, I'm having a bad day. Oh, what can I do to help? Like, I got to figure out a way to fix this. Understanding that we can't fix everything is a start. So like, they got to understand that the foundation I can't fix. Probably something that you've been dealing with over 10 years, right? Not right now. I think being able to let Black men feel warranted and not shunned out is very helpful. I hear a lot of the barbers that we work with, we have monthly calls with these men. So most of them are married. They have baby mamas. They got all type of stuff going on. But a lot of it comes back to, oh, she's not listening to me. Oh, she's over talking to me. She's treating me like I'm still her kid or like she's my mom. I think sometimes is understanding our level of control and knowing that it still needs to be a level of autonomy there with Black men to make them feel that they still bring something to it. Personally, when in my past relationship, when I felt that I was powerless, then I became impulsive and angry. And that's why you talk about domestic violence and then all these kind of toxic relationships, is because and some of this has just been put back when if that young man grew up with a single mother and he had to kind of take over, children and different things in the household, and then he gets with a woman that does the motherly things that his mother didn't do. Now there's a disconnect, and now it becomes something, an explosion. So I think that just listening, understanding that we can't fix it immediately. I'm not a dating expert by chance, but I'm just speaking more from a personal experience and from what I hear. And it sounds that those two are very critical in supporting Black men and their just mental health in their journey. I think also understanding what their trauma is early on. So if their trauma is around trust and realizing that if we're trying to, maybe rush into a marriage or rush into a relationship, then maybe we need to take a step back and address how do we build you to become trusting with me and you before we become exclusive. And I think that's important, because if that trust is tied back to because my mom and my grandmother lied about buying stuff for Christmas, then he's not going to be able to trust other Black women that look like his mom and his grandmother. So we also have to understand that ties back to childhood trauma. And so it's a lot to really take into consideration. And that's why they say you have to take your time when you're dealing with anybody, right? So I think that's where the time, that's an exploratory phase that we can use.
Anybody else have a question? Oh, he answered it. All right. Before we close off, I just want to say thank you so much for letting us know. You guys, this is Lorenzo Lewis, owner, founder of the Confession Project. This is the TT Show, giving you the tea on the Black woman's journey. And today, the Black men and mental health. Make sure that you guys are getting help. There are free counseling sessions. If you go to any type of university and you go to their, I believe it's their social work, their master's department where they work with therapists and things like that, and their training, there are graduate students that offer free therapy sessions. Ain't that right? Also, women, Black girls need therapy. That gives you a list of Black therapists that look like you. If you have a certain religion or just certain lifestyle that you live, they have a whole list of Black female and male therapists. Make sure you guys check that out. Remember, keep that mental right. That's the TT Show. All right, y'all.